Hey everybody, it's Wisp. I've been gone for a little while. I am coming back, but what better way to do that than with Juju Legends? It's one of the biggest events of the year for me. So, I want to come back. I decided I'd wear a shirt with a little bit of like a gold trimish feel to celebrate the winners, but turns out I did the exact same thing last year, so that's a thing now. This is now my Juju Legends shirt, and no one can take that away from me. I will be making videos much more frequently throughout this year. However, I had to start off with Juju Legends because, of course, I was surprised to see the winners had nobody from Engage. I do love the winner circle. I'm happy with it, like pretty much every year. Alphonse winning especially makes sense since Juju Legends, as every year goes by, becomes less of a community-wide event and more of a Fire Emblem Heroes event. So, of course, the main character of Heroes would eventually take the win. I was surprised still, but it does make a lot of sense. I did want to start off just by talking about the four winners. So, Alphonse, Bernadetta, Felix, and Female Robin. Again, they all make sense. Bernadetta has been consistently in the top 4 or 5 of the women's division since she debuted. Alphonse, main character like I just talked about. Felix has pretty consistently been third or fourth place since he debuted, other than the first year because Mark and Crom took that. And then Female Robin. Also makes a lot of sense. After Crom and Male Robin were both taken out of the competition, of course, a lot of those votes, a lot of the Awakening votes would have fewer people to conglomerate around. As for their alts, I think these two together is a pretty interesting thing because both of them are known for both thunder magic and for swords. So I'm heavily expecting Mortal Savant Felix because might as well lump Bernadetta into this as well. Almost every time a student from Three Houses wins, their CYL class has been their master class, or at least heavily inspired by a master class. Even the Lords third tier promotions, those are technically considered master classes. So for Felix, I don't see why that would be any different. Mortal Savant makes sense. He does have a shield or even the Sword of Zoltan that are pretty specific to him, even if not technically. But those could be incorporated into a Mortal Savant design anyway. Robin, known for Thunder and Swords, one of the few really big spell and sword classes. Since female Robin doesn't have Grandmaster Ring yet, that especially feels true. So really, we have two Thunder Swordsmen. I think they're going to be very similar in gimmicks, and they might even play that up in the CYL event that they do. There's always like some sort of like short show or mini game or whatever it is. I think they'll play it up. And personally, I'm guessing Felix is going to lean toward the sword side, but have some sort of lightning effects, maybe a two-range attack. And Robin might even finally have Levin Sword, like everyone's been waiting for, and she'll be a blue tome despite having the sword in her hand in the artwork and in the animation. It's pretty easy to make Levin Sword a blue tome, considering you can just raise it into the sky and cause thunder to strike down. That's an animation that we've seen already. So Bernadetta following that, I think, is going to be a Bow Knight Masterclass. She does have an exclusive bow that has to do with her crest. So a Brave effect or a player phase focus makes a lot of sense for her, and that could be really any color, but colorless specifically makes sense this year. Alphonse, King of Askir now, would make sense if he's just using a very Gustav-inspired design. Hopefully in the face, he's a little bit older. Crom did that. Crom was about, supposed to feel like he was 3 to 5 years after Awakening. Even in his storyline, he became a symbol of peace and hope, and people see him and instantly feel more reassured that victory is going to come their way and all that stuff. That's what his storyline was about. Alphonse, I could see being very similar. The only thing we'll have to be careful of is he can't talk about, if there's a Queen of Askir or, who he might have married or anything like that. He can't talk about who his final foe was or anything like that unless they want to get into like this whole anti-leaf thing. But I don't feel like it's really. I don't feel like that's down the pipeline. I'm thinking we're gonna get something that feels kind of Gustav inspired, kind of regal. Personally, I wish we would go for the Bruno effect because that was his best friend, and his sacrifice in book 6 hasn't really been brought back up. I'm guessing it will in the book 6 revisited Tempest Trial, but for now it's kind of just an event that happened, and I feel like that would be a great way to immortalize Bruno, but I'm guessing Gustav. It's not a bad choice either. The third place for both genders was on the Christmas banner, And we've seen that before with Erica and Crom was on the winter banner. He also had the spring banner, so that, played into him being overall lower that year. But still, this year specifically shows both of the third places were in that Christmas banner. So don't hope for the winter banner if you're also hoping for CYL in the same year. I think is kind of the lesson to be learned there. Fourth place. The reason I want to show these four is because I'm in the camp that believes we will be getting a genealogy remake pretty soon, specifically sometime in 2024, which will really be a boost for Sigurd and Leaf. But I think that the Leaf fans are kind of slowly maybe seeing if Sigurd wins one year, Leaf will probably win the next year, so they're going to kind of pool up together potentially. I do have a huge document to talk about that will explain that. But the really fun thing about this is Deirdre could rise up, but honestly, I think that with Byleth being pretty close, male Byleth being pretty close every year, in fact, this year he had 10,000 votes. He tends to cycle 10,000, 12,000, 10,000, 12,000. And Felix, who beat him, had 11,000. If this was a 12,000 cycle, male Byleth would have won. So I think his fans are going to really push for the win this year, especially considering 30,000 votes from the three houses pool are being shuffled back into the mix. It's not exactly how it works, but just as a rough estimate there. Meanwhile, Sigurd getting a potential boost from a remake. Yunaka and Ivy are both from Engage, and Engage had this really interesting issue where they had more votes than any other single game, but they were spread out around every character. They didn't choose. And there have been a lot of people talking about how Diamant and Ivy are a lock, and when you start thinking your character's a lock, you fail. That character's not going to win because everyone's saying they'll win, but nobody's voting for them. So I don't think Diamant will have enough of a following to beat the men, but I do think Yunaka has a really strong chance to stay relevant, stay popular, and eventually get her ult next year. Ivy winning, I think, is still very possible, but it depends on how much of a role Deirdre has in a hypothetical remake. Other than her, I don't think anyone's going to stop Ivy from winning. So I do think that we'll get two Engage winners next year on the women's side. I honestly think for the first time ever, third and fourth place are just going to be kind of ported into one and two, which that's just a lateral raise that's never happened before, but I really do expect it this year. It also makes sense because, again, 30,000 three houses votes. Shireen is someone to look out for because Alphonse's votes largely will go to her, because if Heroes is your first or your favorite Fire Emblem game, maybe you'll go to first Shirena after Alphonse gets his Brave Vault, then he can't be voted for anymore. Female Robin has fewer places to go. Maybe Tharja, a very popular Awakening character who is very closely tied to Robin. But other than that, we could guess maybe you'll go to other female avatars. There's still a couple left, but I don't think that because you voted female Robin means you're necessarily a fan of female avatars specifically. So it just doesn't seem like Robin's votes dispersing are going to lift anyone above Yunaka and Ivy. I I also think that Engage is going to get a huge bolster in popularity because people now know you can't just vote for every single Engage character. If you like Engage, you've got to vote for Yunaka, Ivy, Diamant. Those are kind of the main ones. Um, and for me, I voted for Male O'Lear. I don't feel uncomfortable talking about my support for Yunaka and Male O'Lear because I don't have a following, so it's safe. I'm not going to sway the results or anything, but admittedly, I voted kind of thinking I wasn't going to win. My Yunaka votes were helping, actually. She did have a chance, but I think Engaged fans now kind of know, okay, let's say I want Male O'Lear to win. Great, but I know it's not possible until Yunaka, Ivy, and Diamond at the very least win, and then I have a chance. So that might affect how people vote. It might not. Engage also had the unique problem of being less popular than Three Houses, while everybody also assumed that it was going to be a sweep like Three Houses was. And the assumption that an Engage sweep was happening had people changing how they voted, which we'll see later on. Most Three Houses characters, specifically a lot of the Blue Lions, had fewer votes than usual, whereas Felix maintained in a game where votes decline every year. That's kind of the nature of things. Felix maintained. So it seems very likely that people like Sylvain fans were voting for Felix, not to try to cheat Engage out, or not because they hate Engage, but because in a lot of people's minds, they were voting for, yeah, Engage is the new game, it's going to get a lot of the spots, but let's at least get one non-Engage character, right? And that thought of just one non-Engage character worked 4 times. Bernadetta had been so close to winning last year that she got a big support from that. So I think that there's a lot of reasons these people won. It's not just because people were preventing a engage sweep, but looking at the data, we can see that it's very likely some of that did help with this. So ultimately, I do think these are the next winners. Going down, Azura has been very popular every single year, which we'll see. Diamant's new. I think next year he'll be closer, maybe third place even, which again makes sense. A lot will raise up 2 spaces, but I don't think he's winning because of the potential remake and because of Byleth's following. Leap, I think, is actually going to drop a couple places, stay in the top 10, but drop. Female Aleer is a huge question mark. She's probably going to stay pretty consistent for a few years, like female Byleth did. Black Knight will stay consistent until eventually people really want another Tellius Victor, and they'll rally the one that's always been in the top 10, or recently been in the top 10. Shireen is going to get help from Alphonse, but is it going to be enough? This is another interesting set. Alchrist, Male Aleer, Tharja, and Freya. Tharja has been 10 for the last few years, so her going up to 8 is improvement. She was, third place once, but it's been a little while since those days. But Alchrist was actually below Male Aleer in the interims, and even though we didn't know everyone's exact placement, we knew that Male Aleer was in the top 5 engaged characters, and Alchrist wasn't, and his support raised and pushed Male Aleer out. If that support and rally went to keeping Diamant up there, he might have performed better. So I feel like it was kind of a misplaced rally there, but that's how it goes. It's a game. It's half strategy game, half popularity pool, and the mixture of those two, right? Because the popularity vote, it would be like one person, one vote, but since characters are removed from the pool every year and you get 7 votes, it just changes how you play, which is fine. I'd love CYL for what it is. It's just to say sometimes the strategies don't work out. I'm surprised at Freya. I don't have any comments there. Male Aleer, he's my most wanted winner, but with only 4,000 votes, it's going to be an uphill battle. And I think part of that uphill battle is getting all the other engaged royals in first and then helping Male Aleer get the pity vote, because Pete wasn't in the game for 6 months after female Aleer. Pete doesn't have his legendary yet and might not by next year, just depending on how they choose to do it. My best bet to get him in is probably to wait for the pity vote to kick in, which, if the game goes on for 5 years, might hit. If it doesn't, I might not get the chance. But that's just sort of where we're at. Vale being in the top 10 and Shez being in the top 10 makes me really happy. I am pretty vocal about my avatar choices. I typically cycle them. So, male Robin, female Corin, male Byleth, female Shez, and then male Aleer. So, yeah, it's not the Shez I play as, but it's Shez, who is one of my favorite characters, male or female version. I don't care. I'm just happy to see them in the top 10 at all. It's also true that most people seem to play opposite Shez and Byleth, which means once male Byleth wins, maybe female Shez will also be in the top 10. Might not, but maybe. But anyway, I'm really happy for both of these people to be in there. I love Vale. She's one of the most interesting characters in Engage. One of the people I would most protect, and just a great character all around. So seeing her in the top 10 was amazing. I wasn't expecting her to be so high. I didn't know that so many people had that support for her, especially since she was already added to the game. Other than that, I feel like the results are pretty much what we expected. Going down a lot of Engage, but obviously Tokyo Mirage Sessions being in the top 20 is huge. Tsubasa and Shida really shows you 24 Tsuki and Chrom, and then Toma and Kane. They're actually the most heavily requested character not in the game yet, is Toma and Kane with place 29. So in the top 30, there's 3 of them. It depends on what statement the TMS fans are trying to make, and I don't have a place in that because I don't vote for that game, but if they would have pooled together, they could have actually won the male division with Itsuki or gotten really high with Tsubasa, but if they wanted to win, they actually could have done that with Itsuki. So I don't think that would change how the votes happen. It's just interesting to point out that they do have the power to win, they just haven't decided on which of the 3 characters, or maybe for them, instead of winning, it's better to have 3 characters really high ranking. Yuri's cool. I'm sad that he's falling, but I also have so many characters I would rather win than him that I can't blame other people for also not, like, I'm not voting for him, so how can I blame other people for it? I think I pointed it out, but Male Aleer is only rank 18. He's very close to being out of the top 20, which would break my heart, so I have to try to keep him in there. Male Shez at 22. Female Shez is at 32. So, oh, exactly 10 ranks lower. But they're both in the top 50 at the very least. Both in top 40. Makes me really happy. I was really interested in just one more character here. Nil was rank 87. Just, since they're associated characters. Nil was 43. She would have been the 22nd woman after Sonya was 21st. So she barely missed being on that big, interim results poster. She barely missed it. But Nil, he was really far from being in the top 20, even top 20 men. But I'm still happy that he got there. I don't know why they used the name Nil. I honestly think if they used Rafal, he would make more votes because a lot of people don't like Nil, the character he pretends he is. Whereas Rafal has this really cool storyline, really epic storyline about his past, his history, who he truly is, and I think that using the wrong name there did not help them. Especially because the character that would probably win is more Rafal than Nil. I don't think IS would make the Nil version of the character actually win. Olivia, I just happened to find her, but I just had to point out I love her. Glad to see she's still in the top 200, but she's probably not winning anytime ever. Okay, so this is a document that I made that I was really excited to go over with some people. It is pretty self-explanatory. The amount of votes from each CYL, the placements, and then it's gender segregated. So male winners votes, placements, female winners votes, placements, and then the front runners. To determine front runners, I just grabbed people who were in the top 10 of ever in a year. If you were ever in the top 10, you were added. And then I just spiced it up, added some people to make it so that there were 26 in each. And the people I selected were based off of a few things. Like if you're an avatar, you're probably someone worth looking at the data for because the avatars tend to get random boosts in popularity. And then, if you're someone I specifically like, then I add you as well. And what this is each vote they've gotten, and then the average number of votes they've ever gotten. The idea is to try to track who could get random rallies or how the votes are decided, and all it's shown me is that the data is incredibly unreliable in a way, but we can still track specific trends, but it's usually more so after the fact. So while I wanted to build something that could help predict who might win in the future years, all this really does is tell us how things went. Why people might have gotten fewer votes or more votes than in specific years. I also did have to try to fix CYL 1 just for the sake of fair data. CYL 1 had 13 days to vote instead of 7. So I divided the number of votes by 13 to get approximately the daily vote, and then multiplied it by 7 so that whatever the daily vote was happened 7 times. That's not an honest way to do these competitions, especially because there's an example. If I got 13 votes, maybe I would spend 3 on Ike in year 1, but I was mainly voting for Crom, so I was using 10 votes. So also why it doesn't work as a popularity pool, right? Because if I was just voting for my favorite, it would be my favorite 13 times, but I don't have to do that. Anyway, so it's not a totally honest number, but it's the fairest way I can make it work in this, but it does fudge the numbers a little bit. Also for CYL 1 and 2, characters were split votes if they were from the same game, which did cause some discrepancies, and I just had to combine the votes. But in the placements, I couldn't combine the placements. That doesn't really work. I could try to do average, but that makes the other people's placements kind of murky. So I just went with whatever their highest placement was, even though it's technically not super honest to what that placement should be. And I was consistent with that, whether you were in the winners category or runners up category. Okay. I also, of course, have color coding. If you ever see blue, then that's you were in the top 10 of your specific gender that year. And if it's yellow, you are a winner. So the winner hardly needs to be color coded because it's just going to be diagonal. Obviously, that's how the winners work. But it just looks more exciting to me to make it that way. And then black just means you weren't eligible for voting. Okay, so one interesting thing I found is between men and women, Alphonse has the smallest voting average. I don't have a total amount of votes, just because that's so different. Like, if you weren't eligible for the last 7 years, like Engage wasn't, or Ike was only eligible for one voting pool, you're not going to have the right average, or the right total. So average was more of a fun estimate to me. And Alphonse is he's below 7,000 votes average year. So congratulations to him for winning. Despite that, it also shows he had one of the biggest upticks in votes. But honestly, it's interesting to me that he got this big raise because Gulveg last year, right, was a Heroes original, and sometimes that helps. Um, because maybe they were just going from one game to the next. Gulvig had 16,000 votes. Alphonse increased by just a rough estimate, um, closer to 6,000 votes than 7,000 votes. So if about half of Gulvig's fans decided I want a Heroes character to win, and they dispersed amongst the Heroes crowd, and a good portion of those went to Alphonse, that would make sense. Just to try to explain why he got such a big raise. It also doesn't hurt him that honestly, Book 8's writing for him has been incredible. He was a lot of fun. Another just fun thing I noticed is if you go to the male frontrunners, in the first year, there's only 2 people that were in the top 10. That's because the other 8 people that should have been in that top 10 that would be in the frontrunners category, well, 7 because Ike was there twice, are all in the winners category now. Almost everybody from the first year's male top 10 has made it into the winners side. For the women's side, that's significantly less true. Cordelia was in the top 10 once and never again. So, best of luck to her fans. Tharja has almost always been in the top 10 except for the CYL 4, the Brave Houses year, where everything was all about 3 houses. Exact same thing is true for Azura. Both of these characters were they had a perfect record, and they would have a perfect record if not for that. Very few people survived that. This is just a fun document. If people want access to it, I'd be more than willing to share it or add characters. I will probably make other videos going over this and just kind of looking at it for fun. But I was really interested in all this data, so I really wanted to tell some of these stories. And that's why, look at characters like specifically Sylvain I have on here. I ordered it so that everybody that was in the top 10 is up higher, and then everybody that's not in the top 10 is on the bottom half, but I should probably alphabetize the bottom half to make it easier to find. Sylvain, up here, number 11, dropped out of the top 10. In CYL 5, I don't even know why. I know the Gatekeeper year was like this big kind of thing happening, kind of a, maybe not joke, but not super serious. But he still, CYL 4 also had botting, which is why these numbers are almost always going to be pretty high compared to everything else. But they tried to fix botting, and obviously it's always going to happen, but they tried to fix it. Sylvain dropped in a large amount of votes. Like, it's a noticeably large number here. That drop also corresponds to Felix staying about the same amount of votes. So it kind of makes me wonder if a lot of Felix fans are going to kind of return the favor, kind of try to help Sylvain win, or if they're going to stick with Byleth because maybe you like 3 houses, you want the other Byleth to win, or where they'll go. I do think Sylvain is becoming a threat. Like not someone that's going to win in the next couple of years, but a threat, someone to look out for. That you want to win is not like a threat, but a threat to the other characters. I get excited looking at this document or talking about this document, so I'm sorry. But yeah, Engage. I didn't specifically highlight Engage characters, but they did really well this year on all in all. They had more votes than any other specific game, and I really do think that conglomerating is going to help them. Unfortunately for me, I don't think male Lear's the one they're going to conglomerate to, at least until Diamant, Ivy, Unaka, female Alir, and maybe even Alcrest are done. We're looking at least like 3 to 5 years before male Alir gets any sort of attention, much less potentially winning. But I got to see his face in the top 10, so that stands for something. He was 18 overall, but he was in the top 10. Just to explain some of these choices I have, yeah, so anyone with blue, it's just a personal rule. If they're in the gender top 10, they have to be on the list. But I put Xander because, like, Ryoma's there, Takumi and Leo were there. Xander's never been in the top 10, even though, if you look at his average votes, 2,600. Look at Ryoma. Right here, 2,800. They're right by each other. He just happened to miss out. And then if we look at the placements, it should be pretty similar if memory serves. Ryoma is a little bit below 76. Xander's 62. Actually, Xander's significantly higher, like 10 ranks higher on average. But that's I had to include him. They're kind of tied together. Itsuki's got all those rallies, so I'm just watching him because I do think sooner rather than later he'll make the top 10. Edward is a personal character for me. I mean, first character, so I added him. Um, Fagato, Alfred. Oh, Alfred. Oh, Alfred didn't make the top 10. Forgot about that. I love Alfred. I really just I thought he was gonna be top 10. I thought he was kind of a lock. I thought he might be like ranked like 7 and Malier would be like ranked like 10, you know? Anyway, Fugato's noble. Rafal's got a great storyline. But I put Brian. I mean, he's technically like related to Ike to some extent, so I think he's cool too. I think his dialogue's funny, but like he's not. Look at this dude's votes. Why do I need to humiliate him like this live on TV? These are anyway. I think it's the same story here. Female Shez, she's an avatar, so I put her on. Also, she happens to be like my favorite avatar. Her and Male Lear. They I don't like the avatars, right? And then they make female Shez, and I'm like, oh, she's really cool. I love that she is not to be perfect, but she still gets to be the character. She still gets to be cool. Um, you don't get a lot of female leads like that. They're usually more, tender, sensitive, that kind of stuff, which is fine. But like, you don't get a lot of female leads like Shez that can be funny and can be the butt of jokes while still being powerful. So I was really excited for her. Um, Melior similar. Melior breaks down, cries, has a lot of moments of weakness. His PTSD isn't the cool, violent, strong, stoic stuff that people are used to male characters expressing. His is he gets weak, he gets afraid, he's terrified, and I think allowing us to see characters in ways that are kind of opposite their gender role in leading roles is kind of huge. So Melior has just become an icon to me. I didn't like any of the avatars, and then all of a sudden, female Shez Melior became some of my favorite characters out there. So that's upsetting to me that they I didn't like the avatars, and now I'm just in. Anyway, whoops. Anyway, Olivia is another great one to me. I also just kind of Cromwell and other than female Robin, Olivia is the most popular choice for his wife. Um, so I wanted to see if her votes or her rankings would increase after his victory. So her votes actually went down a little bit. Fun fact. Um, After CYL 6, she had a pretty big increase and then she had a pretty big decrease. But honestly, was that because she was not getting new votes from Cromwell? I mean, yes, but Engage just came out, so I'm wondering if this will kind of trend lower unless she finally gets an alt, or I don't think she'll get a legendary because she's only one of his potential brides, but she is the most popular one, and she's a dancer, so maybe because it'd be the cool dancer legendary. I don't know, but that's why I'm tracking her votes as well. But awesome. More than willing to share this document. If anybody wants it, message me. If anybody wants characters added, message me. As characters alts come out, I might relook at this document and see what's there, but I just want to make a video playing with this data and showing off this data because I get really excited about what stories you can tell by looking at and utilizing data. I have data analysis certificate. That's, part of what I do. So, that's, there's that. Anyway, it's been great and have a great period of time until I see you again. Sorry this video is coming out a little after the results. Life's just crazy. Take care.